Today we'll be making a fun fold gift card, so if this is something you're interested in, please stick around. Welcome guys to my creative corner. I am Claudette, where I create projects using stamps, inks, paper, mixed media, embellishment, and a whole lot of joy. So if this is your first time tuning into my channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button down below as well as the bell icon so you could be notified when I upload my latest video. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. So let's get started in our project. So this is the Fun Fold gift card holder that we'll be creating today. So we'll be featuring the stamp set, Nothing Better Than, and it also comes with a coordinating die. So what we're going to be using today, so we're going to start out for our new stampers. Our standard paper is our 8.5 by 11. You're going to go ahead and cut this down in half on the 8.5 side. So you're going to cut it down at 4 1/4. So at 4 1/4, so you'll get 4 1/4 by 11. So that's going to be your base of your card. So you're going to need 2 pieces of white cardstock. These are measuring 3.5 by 4. And this craft paper looking cardstock, this we call Crumb Cake. So this is measuring 3 5/8 by 4 1/8. Then you're going to need another 2 pieces of Whisper white cardstock. These are measuring 1.5 by 4 inches. This is called Poppy Parade. It's a red. This is measuring 2 3/4 by 1 inch. And then you're going to need a matching piece of white cardstock, 2 3/4 by 1 inch. Then this is like a dark brown. This is called Early Espresso. So we have an In Color Designer Series paper, and this is in Coastal Cabana. So let's go ahead and get started on creating this card. All right, so let's start out with the base of our card. We'll put those on the side. I'm going to bring in our scoring tool. We're going to put that on the 11-inch side, and we're going to go ahead and score it down the middle. So it should be 5.5. So this is 11 inches here, so we'll score it down the middle, and this is at 5.5. So you're going to score here at 1 3/4, and these measurements are in inches. So we'll go ahead and put our scoring tool away. So I'm going to take our bone folder, and we're going to go ahead and burnish these score lines, and we're just going to make them nice and crisp. So we're going to fold it in half first. Then we're going to take this end, and we're going to fold that in. And this is going to create our pocket for our gift card. Next, what we're going to go ahead and do, we're going to go ahead and do some stamping. So we're going to bring in a scrap piece of paper. And we're going to bring in our 2 pieces of Whisper white cardstock, and as I said before, these are measuring 1.5 by 4 inches. We're going to bring in the cookie, and then this is a 2-part stamp set with the cookie. So you have this part that is detailed, and then you have this piece that's a solid piece that's going to do your color. So you could stamp your detail piece, and you could color that in with your markers, like your alcohol markers or your regular markers, or you could color it in with the solid piece. So we're going to be coloring it in with the solid piece. So what I'm going to do is get Memento black ink, and we're just going to take that and we're going to go ahead and stamp these cookies just randomly. You're going to stamp some of them off, and that's why we're using our scrap piece of paper. So I just turned the stamp in different directions. And don't worry if they didn't, all the chocolate chip didn't print out dark enough. I have a solution to take care of that. So what you're also going to need is another piece of white cardstock. And I already stamped up some of the cookies here, but I'm going to show you. So after you stamp the cookies, what we're going to do is go ahead and bring in the solid color. I'm going to put my Memento black ink up, and we're going to bring in Crumb Cake. Okay, so it's in the brown tone. And it depends on how dark you want your cookie, okay? So I stamp off. And so after I stamp extra here, because we're going to cut these out with the dies. And you kind of just line them up, and it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, I'll do one more. Stamp off, and then you line these up, and it does the coloring for you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and finish coloring these in. All right, if you miss a spot, you could go right back over it again. So what I'm going to do is take a gel ink pen, and this one is by Glaze, and I'm going to go ahead and make these chocolate chip look shiny and pop. Okay, so I'm just going to take this and just press in, and I'm doing this ahead of time because it takes a minute for this to dry. So this will be drying once we're working on the rest of our card. So I'm just pressing in so I could get a little glob. And I think this makes a difference with how your card looks. So that's what I was telling you. If your chocolate chip did not come out well, by using a gel pen would help take care of that. Okay, so we'll set these aside so they could dry. So next what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the Poppy Parade, the red cardstock. And we're going to go ahead and get the die that says cookie, and we're going to go ahead and cut that out. So I'm just going to bring in our new Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and we'll cut that die out. So I'm just using my older plates. So I'm going to go ahead and put that cardstock there, center my cut and die on top, sandwich those between the two plates, and then we're going to just run it through our die cutting machine. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and bring in the matching white piece of cardstock. So we're going to be using a negative space of the word cookie. You're going to get your multi-purpose glue or your liquid glue, and you're going to glue these two pieces together. So I just have a little bit of white showing here, so I'm just going to take and trim that off. So you're going to add those little positive pieces here into the negative pieces to complete your word. So I'm just taking my take your pick tool and popping those little pieces out. And then what we're going to do is just add a little hint of glue and glue those into the spots. Okay, so it's nice if you just take them out individually so you'll know which piece goes where, because they're so small and they have different shapes. So then that we have our cookies, okay? So next what I'm going to do is bring in the crumb cake and one of the whisper whites. So we're going to go ahead and put those two together. Next, we're going to bring in our designer series paper, and we're going to add that here to the lower bottom. So guys, you could use tape runner, whatever you want to glue your papers together. I just like the liquid glue because it's more forgiving. Give me time to move my project around and get it centered. Then what we're going to do is bring in the red. We're going to add a little bit of glue to the back of that. And we're going to just put it to the top there, kind of center it. Make sure you have even edges of your designer series paper. So with our early espresso, we're going to do some heat embossing. So for our heat embossing, what we're going to do is take our embossing buddy, which is just talcum powder, and we're going to wipe that on our cardstock, our early espresso. That's to prevent the embossing powder from going outside of the stamped image. So what we're going to do is get our Versamark ink. I'm going to be using the stamp, and we're going to say "You are just like." So I already have that on my block, and we're going to ink that up. And we're going to go ahead and try to stamp that just in the middle of that. Then we're going to take our white embossing powder. I'm just going to get a coffee filter. I'm going to turn on my heating tool so that could start warming up. Then we're going to take our white embossing powder and put that over our stamped image or stamped sentiment. I usually have a small little paintbrush, and I kind of dust off any of the powder that went outside of that sentiment. Then we're going to bring in our heating tool, and we're going to go ahead and heat emboss that. And once the powder starts to melt, you're going to see it's going to start to get a shiny look to it. And that is pretty hot, so I'm just taking my brush to hold that down. So I'm not sure if you guys can see that. So I'm just going to bring in my little mini trimmer and just cut this down a little bit so the sides could be even. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our dies and cut these cookies out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. Alright, so I'm back. I run those through my die cutting machine. And I'm just going to add some more of this ink gel to the chocolate chips. And I just want you guys to see how it gives that dimension and shiny look to the chocolate chips. I hope you could see that. So now we're going to go ahead and put the rest of our card together. So let's get our Memento black ink. And I'll just make it the same way that I did the previous card. And we'll just stamp one of the cookies here. And then we'll stamp another one here. So you don't have to worry too much of how it's coming out, because then you're going to use some of your die cut cookies to cover those images up. So now what we're going to do is come in with the solid stamp with the crumb cake, and we're going to color those cookies in. We'll bring in our scrap piece of paper once again, because we're going to stamp off. And again, it's how dark you want your cookies to be. Maybe you like them a little crisp on the darker side. That one looked like it got a little burnt. So next, what I'm going to do is bring in 3 of those cut images. I'm going to get my liquid glue, and then I am going to glue one down here. And then I'm going to get some dimensional, and then I'm going to pop one up here. So I'm just going to get some mini dimensionals and add to the back of that. And I'm going to get another of the cutout cookie and add some dimensionals to the back of that too as well. We'll pop the back ends off of those. Add that there. And we're going to add one down below here. Then we're going to take our sentiment and we're going to pop that up and some dimensionals too as well. These could probably take the larger dimensionals, but I have the small ones here, so I'll go ahead and use those. So we're going to go ahead and put that down here. Just bring in some red ribbon, and then we're going to tie a bow. Get my scissors and cut that down. So then I'm going to bring in my glue dot and stick my bow on. So then we're going to bring in the base of our card. So our gel should be dry. So those are dry. So you just have to be careful when your gel is drying. When I was putting it to the side, it kind of smudged a little bit. But we'll go ahead and work with what we have. So we're just going to take our glue. And then we're just going to add our glue to this side right here. Make sure it's nice and even, that you get even amount of space of the pool party showing. So the base of our cardstock is in pool party. I don't know if I mentioned that before. So then we're going to take the other 1.5 by 4 inches cardstock. And we're going to glue it down on this side. And this is going to create our pocket for our gift card. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to put some glue just on the outer edge. But before we put that down, we need to make a half a circle punch. This is 3/4 of an inch. And then we're just going to bring it down here halfway. Make sure it's center. Cut that piece out. Then once that's cut out, then you just go ahead and glue your sides down. Then we're going to bring in our 3.5 by 4 inches cardstock, and we're going to stamp our sentiment on there. And we're going to stamp this sentiment, "You make everything better." And we're going to use that in Memento black ink. And we're going to stamp that first before we glue that onto the base of our card, just in case it's a little crooked. We could always flip it over and use the other side. So I'm just going to stamp that right in the middle. Okay, that looks pretty good. Then they have this tiny little sparkle right here. I'm going to stamp a couple of those. And also in Memento black ink. So we have one up in this corner. Then I put 2 down here. You could put as many as you like. Then we're going to get our adhesive, and in this case I am using liquid glue. And we'll go ahead and glue that down in the center there, close to our score line. Not right on the score line, but close to it. You want to make sure your edges here are lined up. And once it's closed, you don't really see that inner piece, okay? So now what we're going to do is go ahead and add this to the outside of our card. If you guys are getting any creative value from this video, go ahead and smash that like button down below. So we're going to go ahead and just make sure we have an even amount of that pool party showing all around. Now to add the final touches to our card. So I don't know if you take notice, these bottom cookies that I stamped directly to the cardstock, I did not use the gel pen on it. You see how flat that looks? Okay, so I'm just going to add the gel pen to that. All right, so we add that additional gel. So it makes a difference with how the cards look. It's not flat. It adds a little bit of dimension and texture to it. So then you want to take your gift card and it goes right in there. So thank you guys for tuning in to my Creative Corner. This is Claudette, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.